Well, hello, Baba, and Merry Christmas. Surprise, I'm your Secret Santa this year. And as I know for you, especially during the holidays, you have everything right here that you could ever want or need. So instead of, doing what everyone else did the past few years, getting you a robe or pajama pants for Secret Santa, I decided instead to give a gift to your family, which is I'm giving everyone the opportunity on this video to reflect on the love and the wisdom and laughter that we've received from you, and now we can all share it together. And I hope you enjoy this video. It's been fun making it, getting to see some memories, so I know everyone's gonna enjoy as well.
What do I remember?
Yeah, maybe like what was this? I know the story, but like what things do you remember that I know we've heard it too, but some things.
Oh my God, a lot. More than anything, it was our anatomy class. The whole year, he and I fought because he was doing a meticulous job on dissecting the nerves, and I had long nails, and just to tease him, I would put my finger under the nerve and would burst it, and he would get furious. So, meanwhile, we knew of looking at each other that we have some feelings for each other. At the end of anatomy class, all my class, the group of 6 around the body, they were happy that the year is over and we are no longer fighting. And that was the beginning of almost 61, 62 years of knowing him.
What was it like to be, you don't have to smile at the camera, you can just...
I can look at you?
Yeah, you can just look at me. What was it like to be raised by Bubba? What was your childhood like with him?
So I think that he was a really good father for a girl. And when I think about, he always wanted us not just to be our best, but to be independent. And when I think about the things that he taught me, I have a lot of concrete memories of or things that I know that came from him. He was insistent that I know how to not just change a tire, but patch a tire. He was insistent that I learn how to drive a stick shift car. He was insistent that we know how to swim and ride bikes and all of that. He did all of that. And he was very much in favor of us being independent. And I think that's where all that came from.
Mm-hmm.
I can always zoom in.
Should I just have a speculum in here? I don't think I appreciated everything that it was like to be Shuk Gofrani's daughter. Truly, I mean this, until I got older and upon reflection saw the fact that he really truly raised Nushin and I to feel completely capable of doing anything. And it wasn't through direct, it wasn't as though he said, "You're good enough and strong enough." He just treated us as if we could do things. And that was really powerful. And I didn't realize it because I just thought that was how fathers raise their daughters and raise their children until I got older and I realized that it wasn't. So on one hand, it was amazing. On many hands, it was amazing. I mean, he was loving and kind and took us bike riding all the time. He would take us on hikes. He did a lot of the fun physical things that grandma just didn't like to do. But he also had like a lot of expectations of us, which was wonderful because you should have expectations of your children, and that kept us in line. He was sometimes a little dogmatic about his expectations. For example, I don't know if Nushin talked about how he always wanted us to wear shoes, not sneakers, but shoes. We had to wear shoes. It was like a weird idiosyncrasy. So we would always try to figure out ways around it and either like lie to him or change into our sneakers at the bus stop. And then he would bust us as he like drove up to the bus stop. But so those little things were always funny because you had to be on your toes because Bubba had expectations. But he truly, and I've always said, never raised us to feel like, we were the boys he didn't have. He just raised us as if, human beings can work hard. He can expect from us we can be productive. And he always encouraged us to use our voices, as did Mom. We talked about everything at our dinner table all the time. So it was great.
What was it like when Nushin and Shiva came into the picture? Like, what do you remember about like raising them with Baba?
I think both of them, but especially Nushin being our first experience, we both were over the moon. And all I remember, the great time we had. And when Shiva came, I was the happiest of all times. And I think I thought to myself, I was lucky once, would I be lucky again? And thank God I was. Oh my
Nice.
God, so many, so many. I cannot concentrate on one, but one little things that I remember. One day I came home, and he generally did not believe in New Year times, Happy Valentine's, and those things. He didn't like deadlines. But I walked in, and there was a beautiful card with some flowers on the counter, and I said, who could that send me the card? I opened the card. It turned out to be one of my greeting cards, those all occasion greeting cards. There was a bird. The bird was upside down because, and it was written, I love you, no buts and no ifs and no buts. And your secret admirer. And it was one of my cards, the bird upside down, but with that writing, secret admirer, that touched my heart. But honestly, so many good memories. And of course, in between, some of the drama memories that I cannot pinpoint in one.
Mm-hmm. And what about one maybe when Shiva and my mom were like growing up? Are there any ones that you remember about like him with them as a father, or even ones with us as how he was as a grandfather? I know you were obviously doing it together with them.
As much as we were shaped by Grandma, we were really shaped by him, because he always treated Grandma like she was the most important person in the house, even more important than us. Mm-hmm. And he always treated her like she was, almost on a pedestal, that she knew everything. When, she was the best at reading maps. He always bragged about how well she could read a map, how well she planned things. So she took care of everybody. She certainly took good care of him, as we all know. But I think he always revered her and all her strength and wisdom, and made sure that we did too.
What was their relationship like?
Looking back on my childhood as a grown woman who's had the experiences I've had, I appreciate the fact that my parents were always very much on the same team when it came to raising their kids. We did not lead. There was definitely conflict, obviously. I think every house has conflict. And it's not that they didn't disagree with each other or argue with each other. But when it came to raising us, I think I don't want to say he took a back seat, but he knew that she was in charge, and he knew that she was doing a good job in her decisions. And I don't think he would have ever questioned any decision she made with regard to us. And I think we always felt like they were on the same page. Their rules, so many parents I see, or so many friends I have, there's disagreements between the parents and what they should do with the kids. And I don't think Shiva and I really saw that with Mom and Dad. I think they tended to agree on what the rules were going to be.
Grandma and Bubba parented, or Fairy and Shuk, I should say, parented together. Now that I'm older, I realize I think that they didn't always agree, or at least she didn't always agree with the things that he wanted. But at the time, they did a very good job of coming across as a united front. I mean, we really felt like our parents feel this way, which I now, as a parent, realize how hard that is. Because if you don't agree with your spouse, it's really hard to not go against them in front of the kids. So they parented us very much alike. And I think that, again, I've always said that they were not, I think a lot of people assume that Mom and Dad were like the tiger parents, because they hear that Nushin is a judge and I'm a doctor, and they think we must have been type A and, gunners. And I know for a fact that Grandma and Bubba weren't like that. They had very high expectations. They expected that we were going to have careers, probably graduate careers, that we were going to be independent, that we were going to take care of ourselves. But they definitely didn't micromanage anything, meaning we were expected to have our homework done, but there was never any amount of like, show me your homework and let me see. It was just like, I expect you to have it done. And if you didn't have it done and then it was discovered that you didn't have it done, you were going to be in trouble. And again, that's just not the way people parent anymore. And I feel like it led to a lot of independence, which was wonderful. I wish I could do that the way they did it.
When I think of Shuk, there's so many things that come to mind. First, his love of cars. Shuk always had the Porsche that could only be driven on special occasions and in the best weather. So Shuk had a love of cars. I also cannot think of Shuk without thinking what a style icon that he was, and how fashionable he was with his clothing and especially his sunglasses. I also, when I think of Shuk, I think of his special way of dancing. Shuk is an interesting dancer. He's got some moves that you won't see anywhere else on the planet. So I always think of Shuk sometimes on the dance floor. It was always a sight to behold. When I think of Shuk, I also think of his affection and my affection for hot sauce. Shuk likes the foods a little spicy, a little pepper in it, and that's how I like mine too. And his special ingredients that he made of his special concoctions of hot sauce.
Yes.
What was that?
Yeah, my first time I saw Bubba was when I came to visit the first time in the summer of '98. And I remember Ferry opened the door with Shuk. I can't remember what Shiva was. Anyway, but I do remember him standing there and welcoming me with this big smile, because, winding back about a couple months before that, when I proposed to Shiva, I called them to get their blessing. And I just, called him Shuk. And Shiva was horrified. Why are you calling him Shuk? It's Dr. Gufrani. It's like, I know. But it's uncommon for us in Israel to call doctors or people, even doctors, in their, as in a formal way, doctor, unless we don't like them and we want to keep distance. So we call them Dr. Stern or Dr. whatever. But if we like them, we call them the first names. So that was my first, introduction to Shuk. It was like, hey, Shuk, how are you? But he was very, very jovial and very welcoming, and like the whole family was.
Well, here was this very well-known, intelligent surgeon. By the time I met him, he was retired, but he was always very generous and kind and allowing me to become part of his family. And although I never knew him as a professional, I can see those qualities of him being a great doctor, probably a very good with his patients, because he was very good in welcoming into his family, which I really appreciated.
It's normal.
I like
So Jana, what was it like to grow up with our Baba Shuk as your grandfather?
Well, what was it like? It was so many things. The first things that come to my mind are always being greeted whenever you walk through the door with that, expression on his face, like, what? Like he's, like surprised. And then, of course, followed by a bunch of, smothering, slobbery kisses. He would even stick his tongue in my ear and all kinds of places where grandfathers should not be putting their tongues on their grandfather. And not in a gross way, and not in a perverted way. But those, and just his smells and the touch of his, shaven skin on yours, and his hugs and his tickling, and just all of those little things that just make up, who Bubba is, and always just with a smile on his face whenever he was in our presence and always, giving me all the compliments, especially, that I'm the favorite one. So I'm lucky for that in that way. Definitely.
What are you gonna ask? What is your relationship to Shuk Gofrani?
What was it like to have Baba as your Baba?
Well, Bubba, I mean, you know what we always say about him, how he's can be stubborn, but I think with that is, also we always talk about how passionate and loving he is and caring he is. Of course, to his 6 grandchildren, we've felt his love more than anybody. Maybe the girls get a little bit more than we do, but yeah, we had so many great memories growing up. Is that the next question?
As far as my, what I believe defined being Bubba Shuk's grandson or grandchild or granddaughter, whatever it was growing up and having someone constantly showering you with love. And it's something that I've realized more as I've gotten older, because when you're young, you just think that the way that your life is the way that everything is. But I know that it wasn't the norm to have a grandfather and obviously grandmother too, who were constantly making you feel loved through everything they were doing. With Bubba, I know it was, whenever he was calling to talk with us, it was, tell me what, next time you guys come to Connecticut, what are we gonna do? What do you wanna do? And we're gonna do it. It was, walking in the door and always seeing how excited and thrilled he was, and he would jump up off the couch or the chair and give us a hug and a kiss, and constantly, wanting to always just talk with us and laugh with us, and I remember even him kind of, as I got older, calling and talking on the phone and saying, hey, if there's anything you want to talk about, that you don't want to talk with your mom or your dad, I'm always here for you. You can ask me questions. So that was another thing. But really, the overall theme was definitely just he made us feel so, so loved. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
So, what was it like having our Bubba Shuk as your grandfather?
It's amazing. Sometimes, he cares obviously so much about us.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes in the wrong way, but still, he's an amazing grandfather with the right idea.
Mm-hmm.
It was just really cool and unique, and I was lucky as well, because I remember growing up, I used to talk to, I would say, oh, my grandfather lives next door. And he'd be like, what? Mine lives in like 6 hours away in a different state. And I didn't really fully get how lucky I was when I was younger, but it was definitely just a really cool and amazing, unique thing that I got to experience.
Xander, you and our grandfather Bubba Shuk share a birthday.
Yes, we do.
So what has it been like living 2 doors down and growing up with Bubba as your grandfather?
Well, we haven't always lived 2 doors down. They used to live up in North Haven, and that was fun, especially growing up until I was about 6, 7, 8 years old, until they moved next door, around when Feria was born, because Grandma and I would, every time we would go up there, I would be counting the bridges and have different names for them. And once they moved down here, it was just nice because I got to see Bubba, my birthday buddy, every day when I wanted to, and it's been great being able to see him.
What do you remember when you were little with Bubba? Do you remember anything specifically?
He used to always, what he said, I don't remember this very much, but he always says he used to carry me on his back. We used to go for walks together, and I hold his hand, and I used to pee on his neck, apparently.
Was it actually you?
I don't think so. It was probably my mom or my brothers trying to pull a prank on me.
Yeah.
The first memories I remember with him are mostly, a lot of the good ones are when I used to come home from school on weekends. We used to watch Natural Geographic for hours, and it was taught me about different animals. It was just really cool, and I really enjoyed it. was fun.
One of the core memories I have with Bubba and I, just the two of us, is going to Sleeping Giant together and hiking up that mountain, and then going to, I believe it was called Wentworth's, right next door. So that was always just fun, just get to bond with him and get closer.
And I also think of Shuk as a teacher. I thought it was so admirable, and I remember the passion that he felt and the gratitude that he felt from being able to teach at the end of his professional career after he retired from doing surgery to teach anatomy at Yale Medical School. And that was such a rewarding experience for him to interact with students, young, bright, curious, intellectually curious, and to be able to share with them his love of knowledge. And I guess that's obviously another thing that I always admired about Shuk was his intellectual curiosity, that he loved to read, he loved to stay up on current events, he loved to think about topics that were meaningful and important. And that's something else that I also think about Shuk. And then obviously his joy being with his family. When we went to Australia, how much he loved being with his brother, being with his nieces and nephews there, gave him really true joy. And I'm so grateful to have made that trip to see him with his family very early on in my relationship with him.
For memories, I definitely have a few. I like to think of the ones when we were really little, and I remember when Bubba would visit us in Miami, and he would really become another parent for that, week or weekend or whatever it was. I remember he would come onto the playground to pick us up from school. He would come and find us. He wouldn't just, I think we remember with Mom would sometimes, after a long day of work, would just pick us up and we'd kind of go out into her car. Maybe not, maybe she's gonna get mad at me for saying that. But I always vividly remember Bubba coming onto the playground, spending some time with us, talking with our friends. I remember he would talk with our friend Lila Rosendorf. And, another memory I have of when he would visit is just we'd always play games. We have old videos of us jumping on Bubba and really tackling him and treating him like he was our little punching bag when we were little. And I remember one game we would play is the two of us, me, John, and Jana, two of us would go on his back on the couch and we'd start messing his hair up and playing with his hair. And the third one would sit on the other side and they would try to draw what kind of messy hair Bubba had, and he didn't care. And he always, after, we would always fix his hair because, he cared how he looked. But for that, little 5-minute stretch, he would let us play with his hair. And then my last one, I'll say, this is a big one I always think of, is a time where we were going to Wentworth's, and we weren't going to modern pizza, we were also getting pizza. I think it was me, Bubba, Xander, maybe John, the four of us. And I must have been maybe 7 or 8, and for some reason, I don't know how I got sick, but I remember being sick and having a stomach virus, and I felt really sick. Maybe we were just eating pizza, and I went to the bathroom, and I was sitting on the toilet, and Bubba came in with me. I remember Bubba was on the phone with grandma or mom or someone talking, and I remember I just immediately started throwing up on the floor on myself as well, and Bubba was on the phone. He's oh, he's vomiting. He hung up the phone and immediately started getting paper towels and wiping off the floor and taking care of me. And that's one thing I remember, Bubba cleaning up my vomit off the floor. And so he obviously would show us love in all the normal fun ways of playing games and buying us things and whatever, making us laugh, but also taking care of us. I don't know about changing diapers, but he did clean my throw up off of the floor.
Well, when I think of the memories with Bubba, it's just always laughter, always laughing. And when he would pick our booger, literally eat our boogers when we were kids, actually disgusting. And he would, hug us and kiss us. And when we were, little, obviously our big thing, I mean, he would call us up and always ask, all right, like, well, what do you guys want to do when we get there? Like, when you guys come, every time we were visiting. And we would just be like, oh, like, go to Wentworth, go to Sleeping Giant. That was always the same thing. But I remember he would always call and say, like, oh, what do you guys want to do? And, like, if there's anything you want to do. And actually, a lot of Toys R Us runs, too. Definitely got spoiled there, going to this toy store a lot. But yeah, with those, I remember just going, hiking up that trail, and we would always bring, like, apples and peanut butter or bananas and peanut butter. And, and even now, obviously we haven't been as active going on the hikes and everything, but always, it's just sitting on the couch with Bubba, he's always finding different stories to tell us to make us laugh, or just like random tips, like when he told me, anytime I'm pooping, to make sure that the intestines are on your left side, to make sure that you massage out your stomach to get out all the poop. So the medical tips are always helpful too.
There's the more general ones of going to Sleeping Giant, which I know me and John and Alex have, fond memories of, and going to Wentworth after and sitting in the little pagoda, whatever you call those things. And he would tell us these crazy stories. It would sound like folklore of like his childhood and his mom and his siblings. And we would just sit there. What at the time felt like, for such a long time, sitting there listening to him talk. And so those are definitely some of the fond ones. And then, of course, my own personal ones that I feel lucky as, the oldest to have is, of course, going to Italy with Grandma and Bubba and walking all over, and even the European cruise too. But, walking out all over Europe just with Grandma and Bubba. And I remember just Bubba would be in front of us, walking in front of us, sort of leading the way. Of course, Grandma, I'm sure, was telling him where to go, but he was in front, and all of our meals. And I remember I went over to their house the night before we left for Italy, and we had this like big pasta dinner that obviously I was so excited to go and eat pasta for 10 days, but we had pasta the night before going to Italy, and I remember Bubba had this big bowl of pasta with pesto, and I always think of Bubba with pesto specifically for some reason, because I feel like he just always loves pesto. So I remember sitting there watching him eat all that pesto, and just me and him always just, poking fun at each other. And he was a good sport. He could handle all my sassy, bratty ways when I was younger and laugh at it and roll with the punches. And of course, I was lucky enough to have him at my high school graduation too. So that's a good memory. And yeah.
Actually, what I always remember, we were sitting around the table, and then of course either Shiva or Nusha would bring up the famous picture. Oh, I want this picture to be inherited, and he was always start talking about, he got that picture, and it was a really important picture.
Which one?
I think it was with the old lady, and it was always very funny how they would bring it up, and he would be reacting, saying, I really like that picture, and I want you girls to have it, and all this and that. And it's just, it's one of those little things that they're not important, but they are, because it's the relationships and the love, that's the banter and the love that takes place in something so mundane as, kind of making fun of him for this picture, and his response to it, which that's what family is all about. It's not about the big things, it's about the little things that bring it, that makes it the understanding of the warmth and love that's present here.
You know how he had that Porsche in the garage? That was the second car, the old house. The second car was parked deep in. And I remember staying over when it was when we first moved in. We first came, after we got married, came to the U.S. We stayed at the Gofrani's house for like the first month or so before we moved to Stamford. And I remember they went out for an event, Shuk and Ferry, and Shiva must have been at work. And he said, I don't know why, he's like, just watch it, everything's okay, there's nothing here, but make sure, the garage is closed, nobody touches the cars. Like, who's nobody? I'm the only one in the house. So, of course I had to try the Porsche, because I've never driven a Porsche before. So I get he took his car, the first car out, so the Porsche was basically ready to leave. So I found the keys, I put it in. The first thing I do, getting out of the garage, I hit the trash cans. I said, oh shit. So I made the little circle and put it back in. That's my confession. Sure.
That's a good
but,
one.
but there was no damage to the car or the trash cans.
The funny story I would say that I still laugh with him about is when I was a senior in college, my second semester, because I had gone abroad for the summer, I managed to be a part-time student, second semester of senior year. And I specifically strategized it that way because if you are a part-time student, meaning 3 credits instead of 5, or 3 classes instead of 5, you didn't pay as much tuition. And I orchestrated it such that because you paid less tuition, I told Bubba that he needed to give me that money. I said, if I become a part-time student, will you give me that cash so that I can travel to Europe? And after graduation, like a year after graduation. And then I started my pre-med classes. And a year after, I was ready to go to Europe. So I did pre-meds for the year after graduation from college. And then that summer, a year after college graduation, Emily, my best friend, and I were going to go to Europe. So I remember sitting in my bedroom in North Haven, Connecticut, after like taking one of my classes. I don't remember if it was organic chemistry, I think. And I said, okay, so in the next couple months, we're going to go to Europe. I need the money that, that you had saved. And he was like, I don't think you should have that. I think you should invest it. It'll do much better long term than if you use it right now to go to Europe. Like, why would you go travel? Which is so shocking because if anyone knows my dad, he loved to travel and he thought it was so valuable. And he and I had a huge fight about it. He did not want to give me the money. Finally, at the end of like 2 hours of back and forth fighting, he walks into my room with an envelope filled with, it must have been $2,000 or $3,000 of cash, throws it on my bed and says, here's your money. You're going to regret that you didn't save it and invest it. The irony being that I had the most amazing time in Europe. Of course, I never regretted it. And to this day, Bubba says, wasn't it the best thing that you traveled as much as you did? It was so amazing that you got to travel through Europe for 3 months, which was hilarious. And then the last little story I will say is that when I graduated from Georgetown and I hadn't done any pre-meds, and so I had to start taking them immediately after college graduation. And my very first class was general chemistry at Yale. And having come from Georgetown, it was like not an intense academic, rigorous type of environment, I felt. So now going to Yale to take general chemistry, which was very hard, and it was an intense, like the entire semester, like forced into 4 weeks. The first day of class, I came home crying. And I remember I was at the end of their driveway in North Haven, that long driveway, getting the mail. And Bubba drives up and he said, how was your first day? And I burst into tears because it was so hard. I mean, I genuinely didn't understand chemistry and it felt like everyone was so competitive. And I said, it's just so hard. And he goes, well, I mean, you can quit if you want to. And I was like, of course I wouldn't quit. And I could tell that the way he said it was like the first time where he ever offered us an out. And I could tell that he didn't really mean it because he would never have wanted us to quit. And him saying it somehow actually was so good because it helped me fully crystallize that like there was no way in the world that I would ever quit. But him allowing it was somehow really fortifying, even though I don't know that he ever would.
He was always an early riser, always really, really early. I don't remember ever waking up and him not being already awake. I remember when we were little, going on vacation with mom and dad was always fun, but dad was definitely like just totally joyous with us on vacation. And every time we would go into a hotel room, he would pick us up and throw us on the hotel room bed. And that was just something fun that we would always do. We always looked forward, like it was just a goofy thing that when I was a little kid, I have total memories of that. I have memories of him always being good at like physically active, as we all know. He was very, very physically active. So a distinct memory sort of in that vein is when I was 11 years old, I guess. I was in 6th grade. And Nikes that we all love today, that's when Nike was brand new. So let's say Nike was on the scene maybe a year or so before that. And Bubba was a big jogger. And Nike was predominantly started out as a running sneaker. So he had 2 pairs of Nikes. I wonder if she even remembers this. I think his original pair were like blue with this yellow stripe. And then he had another pair that were bright yellow. And he would buy this stuff called shoe goo. Like instead of your sneakers wearing out and you just get rid of them, you'd put this rubbery stuff on the bottom of your soles because he would wear them out because he was such an avid runner. But just to keep the sneakers going, he always took good care of his things and like maintained them for a long time. So now everyone's wearing Nikes. It's getting to be that point. And I wanted a pair of Nikes. More than anything, I wanted a pair of Nikes. And he said, Nushin, Nikes are running sneakers. Do you run? And I said, I can run. And he said, if you can run a mile in less than 8 minutes, I will buy you a pair of Nikes. And I said, let's go. And I don't remember if it was that day, but if it wasn't that day, it was within a couple of days. He takes me to the track where he would run sometimes at the track in town. It was a 1/4 mile track. And I all out sprinted and I ran from nothing because I don't remember being much. I mean, maybe I ran at school and stuff and gym, but at 11, almost 12 years old, I ran 4 laps in under 8 minutes. And he took me to, I think I bought them at the Yale Co-op back then. He took me wherever we bought my first pair of Nikes, which were light blue with like a darker blue kind of stripe. And I love those things. And like my dad, when they started getting holes, I remember sewing the top of those Nikes. So that's one memory just that said so much about him in so many ways.
I love you, Bella, so much. And I'm not trying to be sad, but we only have a couple more Christmas together. And we have to make this one a special one because don't know how long it's gonna last.
For sure. Let's make it a special.
I love you,
one.
Bubba.
Merry Christmas, Bubba. Wouldn't be here without you, and I love you. Yeah.
Bubba, I love you, and don't get too wise on me.
So, Shuk, Merry Christmas. We love you. Those are things I think about when I think about with you. And obviously, also, you've been a great grandfather to Jana, John, and Alex. And especially Jana. I know how much it meant when she was born as your first granddaughter, and how many photographs you took of them. And Shuk's your career as a photographer and your love of photography. I'm so glad that Nusha and I were able to give you 3 subjects for your photography as well. So I love you, Shuk. Merry Christmas. I wish you all the best in the new year.
Merry Christmas, Bubba. I love you so much. It's been a pleasure to make this video for you. And I know that you will enjoy it, but I know more than anything that it's been really great for all of us to be able to reflect and share and just think about all the great things about you. So we love you.
Merry Christmas, Bubba. I love you so much. Thank you for being the best grandfather ever.
I want to tell Bubba that I am the luckiest, most grateful granddaughter in the world to have this life that I have because of you and Grandma and what you did and the things you sacrificed and gave up for us to have this beautiful life and to have each other and get to enjoy all of the fruits that you guys bared and all the labor that you did, and also that I just feel so lucky to be a product of your love and all the love that you gave to me and I know to all of us. So I think that's a very special thing that I'll have with me for my whole life and afterlife that I know that so many people don't get. So I'm forever, forever, forever fortunate enough that I was able to experience that kind of really unconditional, everlasting love from a grandfather.
How appreciative I am of him, how appreciative I am of his family, of Ferry, and you know, it's as someone who also came from another country, how he was also always very welcoming, you know, and I think that's what's important, and I think that's a quality that a lot of immigrants share, you know, that they understand that, you know, they come to a place that's strange to them, they become part of that place, but they always have an opening to others in a similar situation, and that's what I really enjoy.
Shukrullah, I don't want to call you Dr. Gofrani because that will put a distance between us. So Shuk, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful Christmas, wonderful New Year, and a beautiful, beautiful New Year where you enjoy all your family and the gems that you have. Love you.
What do I want to say? Bubba, I love you so much. I know you don't really care about Christmas for Christmas sake, since you don't really believe in religion anyway. But as I've always joked with you, I believe that we are all going to have a robust life on the other side. So in 10 to 15 years, when you are on the other side, and then in 40 years when I get there, I will say to you, I'm so glad we're here together again. I believe that we're always going to be a part of each other's lives. I love you.
Is there anything you want to say to Bubba tomorrow to wish him Merry
I
Christmas?
want to say Merry Christmas, Bubba, Daddy. And I want to say I love you, and I want to say thank you for helping me not just be the woman that I am, but the mother that I am, but also the lawyer. I think back, and my roots in becoming a lawyer and ultimately becoming a judge have so much to do with you and everything that you instilled in me when I was very, very little. So I love you, and I'm so happy that we can all be together this Christmas.
Yay. What do you want to say to him on this Christmas?
I want to say I love you. I have loved you from the moment I met you, and I will love you to the last breath of mine. Sorry.
Good.